Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our July Phoenixville Borough Council meeting. Tonight, we are again having our council meeting via the Zoom platform.
All right, I got it, Dale.
We are glad you have joined us this evening. Participants attending tonight's virtual meeting via live stream may provide public comment during the public participation or public hearing portions of the meeting. We are again having our council information to join agendas are both available on our website. We are glad you have joined us this evening. During public comment, your comment will be received and read aloud by a staff member so that all council can hear the question. Participants must log in as a guest and provide their name and address via live stream chat in order to participate. On our website. Please note that when we use this system, there's approximately a 10-second delay between you sending your live stream chat and it receiving on our end. We will continue to monitor the ongoing pandemic and react appropriately. With that in mind, we expect our August meetings will likely be held virtually as well. With that, thank you again for joining us on this lovely July evening, and we will now begin. We will continue to monitor the ongoing pandemic and react appropriately. First item up tonight, we will start with the moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance held virtually as well. With that, thank you again for joining us on this lovely July evening. We will pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic. First item tonight, we will start with the moment of silence
under God,
and Pledge of Allegiance.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lovely July evening. We will pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic. With that, thank you. Mr. Manager, you can do roll call.
With liberty and justice
Ms.
for all.
Berkeley.
Present.
Mr. Dalton.
Here.
Ms. Dugan.
Here.
Mr. Kirknall.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
With that, thank you.
Here. God,
Mr. Soto.
Manager, you can do roll call.
with liberty and justice for
Mr.
all.
Weiss.
Present.
Mr. Dalton.
Here.
Mr. Ewald. Ms.
Here.
Dugan.
Here.
Mayor Urschler. Mr. Kirknall.
Here.
Manager's here, assistant manager's here. I don't know if the chief of police is, yes, he's here, and the solicitor's here. You have a quorum. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Gene.
Mr. Ewald.
With that, the first item on tonight's agenda is the approval of last month's
Manager's
meeting
here,
minutes.
assistant manager's here.
Any questions or corrections to the meeting minutes from last
And the
month?
solicitor's here. You have a quorum. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Gene.
Now I'll make a motion to accept
With
the
that, the
minutes
first
from
item on
last month's
tonight's
meeting.
agenda is the
Second.
approval of last month's meeting motion by Mr. Weiss, second by Ms. Berkeley. Any
I'm gonna
questions or
have to
corrections
abstain.
to the meeting minutes? Very
And
good.
the solicitor's here. You have a quorum. Mr. Dalton.
Any other
Now I'll
comments
make
or
a motion
questions
to
on
accept the
minutes?
minutes
First
from
item
last
on
month's
tonight's
meeting.
agenda is the
Second.
approval of last. With that, all motion by Mr. Weiss, second by Ms. Berkeley. Any
I'm gonna
questions or
have to
corrections?
abstain.
Opposed? Meeting minutes. Very good. Motion passes 6-0. Any other
Now I'll
comments
make a
or
motion to
questions on
accept the minutes
Thank you
from
very
last
much.
month's meeting.
Second.
First tonight, we do have our annual presentation of the audit. For that, I will motion hand off the,
Now I'll make a motion to
not sure
accept
who our
the,
presenter is tonight. Very much.
Second.
It's Dale from Molly.
Our annual presentation of the audit.
Dale can unmute and go for
For
it.
that, I will motion hand off.
Good evening, everyone. I know the partner on the job, Greg Schenk, was going to sit in the meeting as well. I'm not sure if he's on yet. I am Dale. Can you hear?
It's Dale
Yep.
from Molly.
Our annual presentation of the audit.
Dale
We can hear you.
Unmute and go for
For
it.
that, I will motion hand off.
Good evening, everyone. I know the partner on the job, Greg Schenk, was going to
Get unmute there, Greg.
I am Dale. Can you hear?
Thank you, everyone. And my name is Greg Shank. I'm a partner with Maley LLP, and we're to perform the audit. And Dale Umbenhauer is the manager and handles the
Get
day-to-day,
unmute there, Greg.
operations of the audit.
Thank you, everyone.
And so basically, what I would like to first start with is if we go to the report that you have, and we go to page 4, manager and handles the day-to-day. This is our opinion on the audit. So these financial statements are the borough's, and we are essentially giving an opinion that you are compliant and have followed U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. And you have a clear or unqualified opinion on the audit. So these financial statements are the borough's, and we are essentially giving an opinion. Through our audit management was very cooperative, got us all the information we needed to provide a thorough audit, and we don't have any material weaknesses that we noted during our procedures. The books were well adjusted, which means that management is looking at financial data throughout the year. That's a good thing. You don't want a lot of adjustments at the end. We're going to be looking at dramatic information, so that'll during our procedures. One thing I also want to point out is as we look at these statements, and Dale's going to go through them in more detail, but understanding the accounting substance of these is very important. So if you look at your financial statement, one thing I just want to convey is that on page 18 and 19, okay, and on page 18, this is where it says statement of net position. This financial statement is known as the government-wide basis statement. So what this is this is full accrual. And what that means is your fixed assets are on here, your debt is on here. So it's very much like you would expect to see a financial statement in the for-profit industry. That's what GASB did when they did that. What this is, and that is known as the government-wide, and what that means is the same information as on page 20. And Dale's going to go through this, but this is known as the government fund basis statement. This is on modified accrual and is more closely follows governments from a budgetary perspective. So to be honest with you, many people in governments like this statement and find this more useful because as government's budget, it's a resource in and resource out. So for example, debt payments and fixed asset payments here will be expended. And just so you understand, they're the same information on two different bases of accounting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dale to kind of go through the financial statement.
All right, the first few pages after the opinion is management's discussion and analysis. You'll see at the top that this says it's unaudited. The only thing we really do with this section of the financial statements is compare it to the portion that starts on page 18 that we did audit and make sure that the numbers all agree back and forth. But this is management's opportunity to describe to the reader what happened during the year and the reason for any significant changes from the prior year. So we're going to start on page 18, and like Greg said, this is the government-wide statement of net position. So we'll do the governmental activities column first. We had cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year about 10.9 million. We had accounts receivable of 1.2 million. We had grants receivable of 750,000. And then we had a net pension asset, which means for 2019, our pension plans were both actually overfunded by $1.25 million. Of course, you don't know what the market's going to do in the current year. We don't have, whether or not we're going to have a liability at the end of 2020 or an asset at this point. We had some prepaid items, and then we had capital assets, land, CIP, and then the depreciable capital assets net of depreciation. So we had total assets on the governmental activities of 38 million. We had some deferred outflows of resources related to the Oped and the pensions of about 2.4 million. And then we had liabilities, accounts payable and accrued expenses of about $1 million, a little bit of unearned revenues of about $1,500, and then we had accrued interest of about $31,000. Then we get into our long-term liabilities section, and we had bonds and notes payable at the current portion of $330,000, and then we had current portion of compensated deficits.
Page are we on?
18.
Thank you.
18. Are you with me? Yeah, okay. Okay to continue? All right, so then we had our long-term portion of the long-term liabilities, which is our bonds payable of 7.2 million, our bond premiums of 360,000, our long-term compensated deficits of 492,000, and then we had an Opeb liability of 2.1 million. We had some deferred inflows of resources from pension and Opeb of about 3.3 million, and then we had a total net position of 25.5 million at the end of the year on the governmental activities. The next column is the business type activities, and that comprises the parking, sewer, water, and sanitation funds. And we provide all the same information. So we had 16.7 million of cash, 1.5 million of accounts receivable. We had a small net pension asset there as well of 100,698, and then some inventories and prepaids. Again, we had capital assets, land, construction and process, and then the depreciable capital assets. For total assets of 46.8 million. There were some deferred outflows of resources related to Opeb and pensions of 576,000. And then we had a little bit of accounts payable of 277,000 and accrued interest of 21,000. And then bonds payable in 2020 of 650,000, compensated absences of about 27,000. And then our long-term portion of the long-term liabilities, 5.1 million of bonds payable, 82,000 of bond premiums, 238,000 of compensated absences, and then 426,000 of OPEB liability. There were some deferred inflows of resources related to the OPEB and pensions of 664,000. And then we had total net position on the business type activities of 39.9 million. So over on the next page, page 19, this is the income statement for the government-wide. So the difference between this and the fund level income statement will be that this one contains expenses related to things like the change in deferred outflows and inflows related to the pensions. But we'll go through those reconciliations when we get to them. So the way this reads is left to right. So we'll start with the expenses for the year of 12.3 million on the governmental activities. And then we had some charges for services of 1.3 million. We had operating grants of 1.6 million and then some capital grants of about 500,000. So we had a net expense for the year of 8.8 million. And then this is the portion that has to be made up by your general revenues, which are your taxes. So we had property taxes of 4.8 million, franchise taxes of 328,000, public service taxes, which is the EIT and LST of 4.6 million. There were some fees and fines of 160,000, some grants and contributions that weren't restricted to any specific program of 9,158, and then some unrestricted investment earnings. Then on the business type activity side, we had total expenses of 8.1 million. We had charges for services of 9.8 million, operating grants and contributions of 239,000, capital grants and contributions of 757,000. So we had net revenue for the year of 2.7 million on the business type activities. Then we had also some unrestricted investment earnings there of $79,000, and we had a gain on the sale of the water assets of 3.2 million for the year. So on the governmental activities, we had a positive change in net position of $1,040,000. And on the business type activities, we had a positive change of 5.9 million. Are there any changes on that or questions on that so far? Next, page 20, this is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. So the general fund is the only fund of the borough that's required to be reported as a major fund. And that's just due to the way that major funds are calculated. So the general fund had total assets of 10.1 million. We had total liabilities of 938,000. And then we had some unavailable revenue from property taxes of 169,000. Then we have our fund balance, which is a list of basically we have non-spendable prepaid items of 3,510, and you'll see that agrees to the number at the top under the assets. We also have restricted, committed, and assigned fund balance, and that's all broken out in Note K, and that's based on all the projects that the borough has currently going or has committed to do. So at the end of the year, you have unassigned fund balance, which is your available fund balance of about $2.2 million. On the other governmental funds, we had assets of about 2.1 million, liabilities of 245,000, and fund balances of 1.8 million. And those are typically restricted for highways and other improvements. Over on the next page, page 21, this is the reconciliation of the page that we just looked at, page 20, to page 18, which is the government-wide. And what this does is it takes the governmental fund balances from the previous page and adds back all the capital assets, all the debt, all the accrued interest, the Opeb, the pension assets, to arrive at the net position of the governmental activities. Give me 1 second. The next page, page 22, is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So again, we just have the general fund and then all the other governmental funds are combined. So we had total revenues for the year in the general fund of 11.7 million. We had expenditures of 9.4 million. So we had an excess of revenues over expenditures of 2.3 million. We transferred 1.8 million of that out. So we were left with a net change in fund balance for the year of 466,267. On the other governmental funds, we had about 1.6 million in revenues, 3.4 million in expenses. So we had a deficiency of revenues over expenditures of 1.8 million, which was made up by the transfer in from the general fund. So we had a net change in fund balance for the year of 48,228 on the other governmental funds. The next page, page 23, this again is an income statement reconciliation that gets us from the page we just looked at, page 22, to the government-wide income statement, page 19. So we start with the net change in fund balance from the previous page, and then we add back the expenditures for capital outlays, depreciation expense, the changes in the accrued interest and the capital compensated absences, and then the bond payments and any issuances would also be listed on there. So we went from the net change in fund balances of 514,495 to the change in net position of 1,040,000. Over on the next page, page 24, this is the balance sheet for the proprietary funds. So these are the 4 funds that made up the business type activities on the government-wide financial statements. So we had current assets in the water fund of 9.6 million. We had capital assets of about 14 million, total assets of 23.5 million. We had some deferred outflows of resources of 282,000. Total assets and deferred outflows of resources of 23.8 million. On the liability side, we had current liabilities of 308,000, non-current liabilities of about 1.4 million, deferred inflows of resources of 320 grand, and then we had net position of 21,768. So we had total liabilities, deferred inflows, and resources of net position of 23.8 million. The sewer fund had current assets of 6.2 million, 12.9 million of capital assets, deferred outflows of resources of 130,000, for a total of 19.2 million. On the liability side, we had 612,000 of current liabilities, 4.3 million of non-current liabilities, 148,000 of deferred inflows, and then 14.1 million of net position. The parking fund had 923,000 of current assets, 514,000 of capital assets, 26,000 of deferred outflows of resources, for a total of 1.5 million. We had 11,384 of current liabilities, 27,000 of non-current liabilities, deferred inflows of 40,000, and net position of 1.4 million. The sanitation fund had 1.7 million of current assets, capital assets of 1.1 million, deferred outflows of 137,000, for a total of 2.9 million. Current liabilities were 41,000, non-current liabilities were 162,000, deferred inflows 156,000, and then net position of 2.6 million. The total columns will tie back to the government-wide statement of net position. Over on page 25, this is the income statement for the proprietary funds. So we had operating revenues of 5 million for the water fund, operating expenses of 3.8 million. So we had operating income in the water fund of 1.2 million. We had the gain on the sale of assets of 3.2 million. And we had some investment income and interest expense that netted to $1,069. So we had a change in net position for the year in the water fund of 4.4 million. In the sewer fund, we had operating revenues of 3.1 million, operating expenses of about 2 million, So we had operating income of $1,086,000. We had non-operating expenses of $104,000 for a change in net position of $982,000 for the year. The parking fund had $558,000 of revenues, $363,000 of operating expenses, operating income of $195,000, some non-operating revenues of $1,800. We had a change in net position for the year of $196,427. The sanitation fund had $2.1 million of revenues, $1.8 million of operating expenses, operating income of $325,000, non-operating revenues of $31,000 for a change in net position of $355,000 for the year. The next two pages, pages 26 and 27, this is the statement of cash flows for the proprietary funds. This just shows the ins and outs of cash for the year. Over on page 28, this is the statement of fiduciary net position for the fiduciary funds. You'll see that we have a change in name this year. So the custodial funds previously were called agency funds. That changed as part of the implementation of GASB 84. So the pension funds had total assets for the year of $28.1 million, liabilities of about $9,000. So we had restricted for benefits and other purposes of $28.1 million for the year. The custodial funds had cash and cash equivalents of $599,000, and then a net position restricted for custodial purposes of the same amount. The next page is the income statement for the fiduciary funds, and here again you'll notice a change. In the past, we were not required to provide an income statement for the custodial funds. As part of the implementation of GASB 84, that's now required. So that's why we see an income statement for the custodial funds. The pension funds had total contributions of $962,000. We had investment earnings of $4.7 million. So we had total additions of $5.7 million for the year. We had deductions of $875,000. So we had a positive change in net position for the year of $4.8 million to the pension funds. The custodial funds had additions from developers of $1.2 million. And then we had escrow payments out to the developers of about $2 million. So we had a change in net position for the year of a negative $752,903. You'll see that the net position at the beginning of the year there says restated. And what happened is the implementation of GASB 84. In the prior year financial statements, that amount there, the $1,352,351, was a liability. GASB 84 flipped that from a liability to net position. Starting on page 30, this is the summary of significant accounting policies. So this just describes how the borough accounts for every item that is reported in the financial statements that we just went over. And I would like to point out on the bottom of page 30, where we talk about blended component units, another thing that GASB 84 did was it determined that pension trust funds are now component units of the primary government, whereas we previously just reported them as fiduciary funds. Also on page 34, I just wanted to point out again that we changed the wording from the word agency funds to custodial funds. I'll flip over to page 39 now, and this is our deposits and investments footnote. And it says that as of December 31st, 2019, the carrying amount of the borough's deposits was $28.2 million. The corresponding bank balance was $28.4 million. Of the balance, $515,000 was covered by FDIC insurance, and the rest was collateralized under Act 72 in accordance with Pennsylvania Assembly. Over on page 40, this is continuation of the deposits investments footnote. Halfway down the page, you'll see a listing of the pension plans footnotes and the fair value of each of the categories of investments. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is on page 44, and this is note F, the long-term debt. This shows the roll forward of the long-term debt from the prior year to the current year. So we retired about $3 million in governmental activity debt and about $1.1 million in business type activity debt. And these amounts will tie directly back to the balance sheets. Next, I'd like to jump over to page 49, and this is the police pension plan. This is showing the changes in the net pension liability from the prior year. And you can see as of December 31st, 2018, we had a liability of $743,000. But now, due to the well-performing stock market, we have an asset at the end of 2019 of $966,000. So we had a positive swing of 1.7 million for the year for the police pension plan. Over on page 54, is the same information for the non-uniform plan. There again, we had a liability of $987,000 at 2018, and we now have a asset of $390,000 due to the $1.4 million positive swing. Over on page 58, this is the changes in the borough's total Opeb liability. So for the Opeb liability, at December 31st, 2018, we had $2.6 million of total liability. And we had a net change for the year of a positive swing of $33,000. So our liability at the end of 2019 is $2.5 million. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is over on page 62. This talks about the prior period restatement, which was the result of the adoption of GASB 84. And I had previously pointed out that $1.4 million was recognized as net position instead of a liability. The last thing on that page there is a subsequent event that we've been putting in all of our financial statements just to let the reader know that we're all thinking about COVID and the possible effects. Over on page 63 is the budget to actual for the general fund. So we budgeted total revenue for the year of 10.8 million, and that came in at 11.7. So we had a positive variance with the budget of 900,000 for the year. We budgeted 8.5 million of total expenditures. Actual expenditures were 9.4 million. So the actual expenditures were again about $900,000 over budget. So we ended up with an excess of revenues over expenditures on a budgetary basis for the year of 3,368, which is some very good budgeting. We budgeted 1.8 million, we budgeted 2.7 million for transfers, but we only transferred 1.8 million. So we had an $814,000 positive variance there. So for the year, we had an $817,000 positive variance to the budget. The next few schedules are all the required schedules for the pension plans. I'll draw your attention to page 66, first of all. This is the investment rate of returns for the police plan. And you'll see that in 2019, we had a rate of return of almost 21%. In the prior year, we had a loss of 7.5%. So we have no idea what 2020 is going to shake out at. This could be a positive number or a negative number next year. Over on page 69 is the same information for the non-uniform plan. Again, almost a 21% return for the year compared to a loss of 8% the prior year. The next page, page 70, is a required supplementary schedule for the Opeb liability. And then the rest is supplementary information. These are just combining schedules that show you on a fund basis what was listed in the front as the other governmental funds. I'm not going to go through these unless anybody wants me to. Otherwise, I'll just open it up for any questions.
Any questions from members of council?
Nothing here.
Okay.
Hearing none, I guess that concludes our presentation. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Dale, Greg, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And it's always nice to have a good audit.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move along with our agenda. Up next, we have our first round of public participation. Any members of the public who wish to make comment, please use the live stream system as explained at the beginning of the meeting and on our website. For those of you who are joining us, there is about a 10-second delay, so give us a few moments. If there's any comment, it does have a little bit of a lag before it reaches us. I will look to staff to see if there is any signs of any public comment tonight.
Mr. President, I have nothing at this time.
Thank you very much. We will be having a public comment at the end towards the end of the meeting, so if there's no public comment at the moment, we will continue on with our agenda, which brings us up to communications and council participation. Any updates or comments from any members of council?
I just wanted to check in about the closures and open air. I think because it's our ward, John, we probably hear the most, and you really have kind of championed this initiative with staff. I think we got it up and running very smoothly and quickly because of all the work that was done ahead. I've heard a lot of positive feedback, and I think anything constructive we've been able to address from week to week. And I know that staff have been getting surveys out. I think we're on our second or third round of surveys to solicit some input from the public. So just wanted to check in.
I haven't, just as a FYI, we've been working with the Chamber and a Phoenixville Area Business Association to, keep communication open with their members. And anything that we do get, we address as soon as we can or try to come up with the best compromise as possible. But yeah, it's been fairly positive. Just making sure that, reassuring those rules and regulations. But it has absolutely been a team effort from code enforcement, parking, police. We've all just made sure that we're all on the same page, putting out the same type of messaging, and then getting that to the community as best we can.
Thank you, Kelly and staff. I will second that. I have heard, everything I've heard has been very positive about the closures. I know it was a lot of upfront work and planning. It seems to be going very smoothly, both in deploying and opening it back up. So I do appreciate all the effort that's been put into that, because it's not. It looks easy, but it is not, especially with the number of departments that are involved in order to execute it week after week. Without action, that we are still on schedule to keep that operating until the first week of October. So. If there is any other comment, or if any other members from council are hearing anything, we do have time to discuss that.
I'll just offer that I do appreciate the additional signage that was added. There seemed to have been an uptick in concern publicly on social media of masks not being worn as people are walking. So hopefully, I don't know what people feel about Gene or Peter, how that may have helped one way or the other. I haven't been downtown that much in the past 2 weeks, but appreciate that effort being done.
Good. I think we talked with the state legislators on Monday, and the mayor was indicating that it was a noticeable uptick in people wearing masks. And I think the fact that it was a polite way of doing it, we weren't in people's faces. It was just signs everywhere, a constant, gentle reminder that this is what you have to do. And if people will continue to do that, this is going to be a very successful season. We'll call it a season through October.
Any other questions or comments from any members of council tonight?
I have one more just comment on we did work with Teresa Haig and some local artists for the cement blocks that our public works have been putting up and down every week to make sure that everyone is safe within that closure. They look beautiful. We're going to be getting some photos of those to make sure that we highlight those on our website and on our social media. So be on the lookout for that if you haven't been able to see all of the sides of those. So we're also going to be doing that. That's it. Just to give a little plug on what we're doing with that part.
I think the bringing art into the downtown during our recovery process here has been very important, and I appreciate Teresa's work on everything she's done to bring art into the public space week after week. And we always look forward to seeing what she's going to create next. With seeing no other comments or quick communications from council, we'll move on to our mayor's report. Mr. Urschler.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all so much for joining us here virtually tonight. Just a couple of quick things to report. I just wanted to wish a very happy graduation to all of our high school students, our college students, any of the students who are in 5th grade, 8th grade who were promoted within the last month. This has been a very challenging time, but we are all supportive and so very proud of you from within our community. So thank you very much. Thanks for being flexible. And although it wasn't a traditional ceremony that many of you got, we do know that a number of the schools did help to have very special acknowledgements of graduations. Also, a very happy 4th of July. Again, not a traditional ceremony that we had, but I just really wanted to thank all of the people with Phoenixville First, all of the people from the Chamber of Commerce, from the Borough of Phoenixville, from In This Together, PXB, from the Phoenixville Community Health Foundation, and Strunk Funeral Home, who helped to put together the virtual ceremony. I know that a number of people saw it moving throughout the borough, the 2 billboard trucks that were moving throughout the borough on the 4th of July, to just wish everyone a very happy 4th of July. So thank you to all of those all of those groups who really helped to make that possible, as well as to the individuals who helped to make the virtual fireworks presentation possible that night. I do want to just echo what Councilwoman Berkeley said, Mr. Ewald, of course, Mr. Crack. Just what an incredible job everyone has done, all of the businesses, the Borough Council, all of you, our Borough staff, all of our departments who have really helped to make the downtown a very safe extension of the interior space so that restaurants and stores could once again open and have really a nice, pleasant and calm but healthy and safe atmosphere. Councilman Moore, as you said, we have been very fortunate. About 2 weeks ago, we began posting additional signage, as Mr. Crack said, out on the street with campaigns, Mask Up on Bridge, Mask Up on Main, and Keep Phoenixville Open. We've been very fortunate to see a number of individuals now kind of remembering to put masks on, not only inside. We've always done a great job putting masks on when we go inside, but really people remembering to put masks on when they are in a confined space. And I would just encourage all the residents that, Bridge Street, although it is open and although you are outside, please put a mask on when you come down to Bridge Street. It is just more of a confined space. We have more people who are down there. So please just do that to keep us all safe and also to help keep Phoenixville open. And that's really the most important thing we can do is keep Phoenixville safe, keep it healthy, and keep it open. We have been very fortunate too. I just want the public to know one of the big questions that we have is, do we continue to track and are we concerned about the opening of Bridge Street or the closing to open Bridge Street? How has it impacted COVID numbers? I just want to let you know that we have been tracking that. In the last 30 days, we have only seen 25 new cases within the borough of Phoenixville. Although 25 seems like a lot, that is trending in the right direction for where we need to be with new cases. Of course, we are increasing testing substantially. And if anyone does need to get a COVID-19 test, please check out the Chester County Health Department website. We do have testing at least every 2 weeks here on site at Berkeley Elementary School, but you need to have an appointment and you can do that through the Chesco, let me just make sure I tell you the right thing. Chesco.org website. So if you do have an interest in getting tested, whether or not you have insurance, please go to chesco.org and you can search for testing, and you'll be able to see a list of testing facilities as well as the times they are here visiting us in Phoenixville. So over the past 30 days, we've only seen 25 new cases here in the borough of Phoenixville. That is still with the streets opened in the way that they are. And then we've actually only seen very small increases in East Pipeline and Schuylkill, 6 in Schuylkill and 5 in East Pipeline new cases. So thank you all very much. Everything that you're doing, although it has not been an easy couple of months, is definitely helping to keep everyone in our community safe. We continue, of course, through our Office of Emergency Management and a number of incredible dedicated nonprofits to help serve the community. We still serve a significant amount of meals. If anyone within our community does need a meal, or if students need meals, there are no questions asked at the school district Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We have 5 sites. Please check out the Phoenixville Area School District website. Again, that's children and adults. You don't have to have a child in the school district to receive food if you need it. Finally, I just, again, want to thank the Office of Emergency Management, our Director, Karen Williams, who is continuing to help us to secure food for the community. And also, we are starting to really focus in on rental assistance. So if you have any questions about that, please check out some of the nonprofits we have here in our community. Orion, PAX, or sometimes also called the Phoenixville Area Community Services. Both are very well aware of rental assistance and mortgage assistance programs that are being released through the state. If you haven't done so already, please, please, please take your census. Make sure that you're taking your census. Right now, unfortunately, Phoenixville is kind of reporting down on the number of individuals who have taken their census. The deadline for the census has been extended, but please make sure that you're doing that. Look for that postcard in the mail. If you don't have it, go to 2020census.gov and make sure that you have the information you need to take your census. It's very important for our community. It's almost $2,100 per person. So if you don't take that, we could lose out on a significant amount of money in our community. Finally, please, I just hope all of you have a very safe and healthy summer. This is very different than most of our summers that we're accustomed to, but we are all still together, even if we are apart and virtually. And remember, if you do need any help, if your neighbors need any help, please visit the resources that we have available. Of course, the website In This Together, pxv.com, In This Together, pxv.com. A number of our nonprofits are on their Office of Emergency Management. We have resources and help available for you if you need it or your neighbors need it. If you want to help volunteer, if you want to get involved in some way, check out that website and we'll make sure to get you involved. So thank you all very much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep those masks on because it's really helping to keep things going.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With that, we will move into the next agenda item, which is appointments and public resolutions. Every month we do like to announce that we have several openings on various boards and committees. Right now, we have not been making many actions during the COVID pandemic, as we've not had in-person meetings to interview folks. We do have some items tonight that do require action in order to sustain quorum. Any members of the public that are interested in volunteering on a board or committee, all those assignments and openings are available and up to date on our website. And you can easily reach any of your members of council or our managers for more information. With that, I believe we do have an application tonight for reappointment on our tree advisory committee. What is council's pleasure?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion to reappoint Susan D. Turkio to the Tree Advisory Commission.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Moore. Any questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I want to thank Susan for renewing her commitment to our Tree Advisory Commission. It's a very important body that helps keep all of our street trees healthy. And with that, we also have openings tonight due to a pair of resignations on our Civil Service Commission. Applicants were asked to join us tonight. I believe several, if not all of them, are available within the meeting at the moment. in your packets, there were the applications for the 4 applicants. And with that, I just see.
Mr. President, you want me to just explain what the differences is that you have?
Yes, please do. I'd look to see who all is in the room.
Okay, so the Civil Service Commission consists of typically of 3 members. In the Borough Code, there was a change that allowed Borough Council to allow up to 3 alternates. So we have typically had all 3 Civil Service Commissioners, and then at various stages, 1, 2, or in one case at one time, 3 alternates. So right now you have 2 vacancies, and the rules are that the chair is the person that can pull somebody from the alternate list to make up the quorum. The problem that you have is that the chair was one of the persons that resigned. And so since there's no quorum, there can't be a vote to reorganize. And so unfortunately, as she probably would like to do, Samantha Anderson can't create a quorum by herself. So what you have tonight is you have 2 people that are on the alternate list, and then you have 2 applicants that are vying for the open seat. You can vote to take the 2 new persons and make them on the Civil Service Commission. You could take the 2 alternates and move them over. There's no requirement to do that. Or you could take 1 of each. So you have various options at your disposal. If you were to, as an example, pick 1 alternate and 1 applicant, and you don't have to then put the other applicant on the alternate list. So you have a lot of variety in the way that you can handle this. I thought I'd explain that so that the public understands there's a lot of moving parts on this one, something that's not happened that I've ever seen before. So you may want to interview those that are here as to why they would want to be moved from alternate to the regular Civil Service Commission, and why the applicants would want to be on the Civil Service Commission.
Thank you, Gene. And tonight we do have a member from, who's currently an alternate, Nick Cranach, and we have a new applicant for the commission, Ethan Castro. With that, any members of council have any questions for our applicants tonight? Dana, did you have a question about the process, or?
Yeah, I had a question about the process because it seems logical to me that we would move the alternates up to the regular positions and put the new applicants, or have them have the alternate position. It just makes logical sense to me.
You're permitted to do that, Dana. It's not required. So that's totally within your discretion.
Question I have of the alternates, have they expressed desire to become not alternates and stable members of the group?
They have.
Okay.
Any questions?
So we do have Mr. Cranach here, who has been an alternate and has expressed interest in moving up. And then we have a new applicant who is expressed interest in this commission, as well as a few others. So maybe if we could just hear from both of them, obviously 2 different perspectives, because one has already been an alternate and one is kind of new coming in.
So I'll start with our current alternate, Mr. Cranach, if you'd just like to introduce yourself. I think you're still on mute.
You hear me? Sorry about that. My name is Nicholas Cranach. I am a current resident of the North Ward in Phoenixville and a current alternate on the Civil Service Commission. I've been on as an alternate since 2018, and I'm looking to move up to a role on the commission as a voting member, and I've been attending the meetings for the past 2 years for the Civil Service Commission, and I'm just looking to serve my community in a different way as a member of the commission.
Thank you, Nick.
And Mr. Pela Castro, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ethan Pela Castro. I'm a member of Biddle Ward, and I grew up around the area. Actually, Nick and I knew each other growing up, and I moved back into the area about 7 years ago. And this area has done so much for me, given me so much opportunity. And I just really wanted to do something back with Phoenixville and give back some of my time and some of my, knowledge and give it to Phoenixville. And that's pretty much it. And really help any way I can. I think Beth noted that I've, applied to several different commissions as well. So I'm not like dead steadfast set on one. However I can best utilize myself to help the town of Phoenixville is really what I'm looking forward to doing.
Any questions from members of council?
Okay. Sorry, I didn't have anything further if no one else does.
I was going to ask if I could just ask both of you gentlemen to kind of in a quick soundbite explain why you're interested specifically in these roles and what you think you bring to these roles in terms of background or knowledge, expertise, etc.
So I have, like I said, I've been on the board for the past 2 years. I think me being able to be an alternate on the board has really given me that experience to kind of see how the commission operates and the ins and outs of what goes on in a meeting and talking with the police. I just think it's really important with the world that we're living in right now to have that type of oversight from the community to be able to help out and be involved in the process of hiring police officers and possibly firemen. I just think it's very important for the people of the community to be involved in the borough, not just sit back and do nothing. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to step up and be an active member of a town that has been a huge part of my life.
Yeah, so my background obviously is, pretty much geared around a lot of consulting. And within that, lots of human resources consulting, as well as strategy and operations. Currently, I'm an executive with a supply chain company. And that's pretty much anything you can imagine from aircraft parts going, really complex systems going through all different parts of the U.S. But then also, I still do executive consulting on the side. And my major region is pretty much the same as Nick's, just giving back to the community and sharing a part of what I have. And so my expertise and my ability to, not just be a follower in the community, but also become a leader and, help us continue to grow.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to both of you. Nicholas, you may have seen me miming thank you after you spoke, but I realized I was on mute, so I apologize for that. Thank you to both of you. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Kirkner.
Yes, may I ask a question of both
Absolutely.
gentlemen, please? I would just like to put out there, do either of you have any potential conflicts of interest when it comes to dealing with the police?
No, I do not.
I do not.
Do better.
That's a good question, though. No, I don't know any of the police officers on a personal level.
Great, thank you. Nice, easy question, I hope.
Okay. With that,
Mr. Ewald, and just have a question. Mr. Pela Castro, would you be prepared to serve as a alternate if we did not at this point appoint you to the as a regular member of the commission?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my goal is to serve the community, so it's not like my way or the highway.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions from council?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Nicholas Cranach to the Civil Service Commission vacancy with the term ending in 2026, as well as appoint Amara Thornton Brown to the Civil Service Commission with the vacancy ending in 2025. Should I do a separate motion for alternates, or can we do it all in one, guys?
You can do all three.
Okay, and then I would like to also include in this motion appointing Ethan Pela Castro to the vacancy of alternate.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Dalton. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Palacastro, Mr. Cranach. We
Thank you
appreciate
so much,
your
guys.
willingness to step
Thanks.
up.
Thank you.
And staff will be in touch to follow up on the next steps. All right. With that, and as I mentioned prior, there are a few other openings that we will be hopefully addressing when we get back into live meetings, but those vacancies are available on the website. So with that, we'll move into the next section of our agenda tonight. We have under new business. Tonight we did receive a update on our 2019 audit as presented, and what is council's pleasure. It is protocol that we accept the audit as presented. So,
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we accept the 2019 audit as presented tonight.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkner, second by Mr. Weiss. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes
Aye.
7-0.
I'll offer my thanks to the borough management for what an excellent financial performance overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Here, here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fantastic as usual.
And with that, we under new business, we also have a consideration of a zoning hearing board application for 209 Fillmore Street regarding an appeal to the zoning officer's decision of May 15th, 2020, and determine whether to send borough representation to the upcoming, I'm not sure if it's still gonna be in August, but the upcoming zoning hearing board meeting. Mr. Manager, if you'd be able to give us a little bit of background on this. I understand that there's a denial and you are on mute.
It's essentially a dispute over the parking requirements for the site. The zoning officer has made a determination that what they're asking for would not be in compliance and be out of zoning. And he has made a pretty clear point. I think the solicitor would say that we believe we're absolutely right in taking the position, and in this case, because of the nature of what they want to do in that district up off of Fillmore Street, that we do want to defend this one. So our recommendation at minimum is to send the codes director, but we also believe we should send the solicitor to this one. We don't know if it's going to be August. There's bits of back and forth. It was supposed to be this month. It's jumped to August and may even likely jump into September. There doesn't seem to be a hurry on the applicant's part, but we want to be prepared and not have to come back to this meeting and get your concurrence. If and when it goes, we want to send representation. It's one of the rare times that we do that.
Very good. Very good. Any questions from council pertaining to this decision?
Do you need a motion at this point?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the Borough Council send a representative, the appropriate representative, to the next zoning hearing board meeting with regards to the request, the request by David Michael Cranach concerning this project.
Can we be a little more specific with that motion? Who are we sending? And we are sending the representation, whether it be Mr. Bulker or Mr. Bulker and myself, to support the decision made by the zoning officer. I think that's what you're trying to get out. I guess the question is, who do you send?
The staff is recommending both.
Then I'll amend my motion to recommend sending both the zoning officer and legal representation to the next zoning hearing board on the meeting on this particular request.
I'll maintain my second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Moore, a second by Mr. Dalton. Chuck, does that meet the parameters of the motion required?
Oh, absolutely. We're supporting the zoning officer's decision, and we're there at the hearing for that purpose.
Just want to make sure we got all our I's and T's crossed. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. We will now move on to resolutions tonight. We do have two members who unfortunately are moving out of the area, our two resignations from civil service. We'll need a motion to adopt a resolution for both of these members.
Mr. President, I'll make a resolution of gratitude for the public service of Sarah Pepple as a member and chair of the Civil Service Commission for the Borough of Phoenixville, Chester County, Pennsylvania.
Second.
Very good. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes, looks like 5-0 with a couple people stepped away for a moment. With that, I will read this resolution into the minutes for tonight. Again, we do appreciate Sarah's commitment. She's just
Wait, I'm sorry, did I miss the vote? Sorry.
I think we can sneak. Can we amend the vote or? So I'll move on. Okay. Well, I'll continue with reading the resolution for this. Tonight, a resolution of gratitude for the public service of Sarah Pepple as a member and chair of the Civil Service Commission for the Borough of Phoenixville, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Whereas Sarah Pepple served diligently and honorably as a member and chair of the Civil Service Commission from December 10th, 2013 through June 9th, 2020. And whereas Ms. Pepple provided invaluable and dedicated service to the Phoenixville Civil Service Commission and in numerous borough councils during that time. And whereas Borough Council wishes to express its most sincere gratitude and appreciation to Sarah Pepple for all of her efforts and commitment to the borough in performing her dedicated responsibilities over the past 7 years. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Borough Council of the Borough of Phoenixville that Sarah Pepple is recognized and publicly acknowledged for her commitment and efforts in performing her duties, and further does offer their best wishes in her future endeavors. Again, we will have staff send this off to Sarah. I believe she's moving out of the community, and she's done a great job on civil service for the last 7 years. A committee that not a lot of people pay attention to, but has a lot of impact on our borough.
My only observation of that resolution is I'm not sure the word innumerous is actually a word. And I wonder about that. And also, as a writer, also, you could probably actually count the number of councils they serve, given that they had a term. So just put that out.
We'll check on that.
I believe it is a word, and if it's not, it will be once we vote on this.
Okay. We voted, so it already is.
Oh yeah. So that's how that works.
Send it to Webster's.
Roger.
And what is council's pleasure considering for Dr. Michelle Sincerapino?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution acknowledging Dr. Michelle Sincerapino for her service on Civil Service Commission.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Weiss. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. And I will now read this one into the record as well. A resolution of gratitude for the public service of Dr. Michelle Sincerapino as a member of the Civil Service Commission for the Borough of Phoenixville, Chester County, Pennsylvania. Whereas Dr. Michelle Sincerapino served diligently and honorably as a member of the Civil Service Commission from November 10th, 2015 through June 9th, 2020. And whereas Dr. Sincerapino provided invaluable and dedicated service to the Phoenixville Civil Service Commission and in numerous Borough councils during that time. And whereas Borough Council wishes to express its most sincere gratitude and appreciation to Dr. Michelle Sincerapino for all of her efforts and commitment to the Borough in performing her dedicated responsibilities over these past 5 years. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the Borough Council of the Borough of Phoenixville that Dr. Michelle Sincerapino is recognized and publicly acknowledged for her commitment and efforts in performing her duties, and further does offer their best wishes in all her future endeavors. Again, we thank Michelle and Sarah. Both happen to be moving out of the community. Their services and skill sets will be missed. With that, we have two other resolutions to consider tonight. We have one for an RCAP and then one for a wastewater treatment center project. Gene, if you'd be able to give us the background for our resolution for the RCAP, or Kelly.
It's basically the same scenario that we went through with the rec center. You apply through this process to get your name on the list. Just because we apply doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get the funding, but we are asking for, in the case of the firehouse, $2 million ask. They're due, I believe. I think they extended it into August or even into September. So we had a little bit of breathing room, but with so many things that we got going on, we don't want to leave things laying around. So it's just as easy to go ahead and do this tonight while we have a relatively light night. The RCAP is basically for the construction of the firehouse, as you know, and you'll hear later on tonight. We're in the $7 million range for building a fire station. Certainly, any amount, whether it's 2 or 1.5 or 1, helps buy that service down. We have already talked to our state legislators, all Senator Dinniman, Ms. Schusterman, and Ms. Otten, so they are aware of it, and they will support the application on our behalf.
Thank you, Gene. With that, what is council's pleasure for this application tonight?
I will make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing submission of the Redevelopment Assistance Capital Program grant for the Phoenixville Borough Fire Station and Paradise Street project.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Berkeley, second by Mr. Moore. With that, questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sorry, who's that? Opposed? Oh, sorry, those opposed? Anybody opposed? Okay. Sorry, time delay here messed me up. Motion passes 7-0. And our last resolution of the evening regards the work that was done at the wastewater treatment plant. Again, Mr. Crack, if you can give us a little background on that project.
Sure. As you look at the resolution, you'll see that initially back in October, as we were going through the budget process, we realized that we were having issues with the cover for the digester, the floating cover for the digester. So we did put it into the the 2020 budget as a capital item. I thought we would have gone the normal route of the bid process and go through that. Unfortunately, what happened in, I guess it was the May timeframe, whether it was the weather or what, it began to crack and began to affect the actual digester itself. And so under the rules of for emergency repairs, we can go ahead and move that forward. We did go out and got a contractor in to take that lid off and make it safe again, dewatering what was in there and what have you. So this resolution covers the fact that we did something outside of a normal bid process. The remainder of the project's about a $400,000 project. The remainder of the project is still in the budget, and we would still do the normal bid process for whatever other work we were intending to do.
Thank you, Gene. With that, what is council's pleasure regarding this resolution?
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution pursuant to 8 PSCSA section 1402 regarding the nature of the emergency demolition of a digester roof at the wastewater treatment plant.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kirkner, second by Ms. Berkeley. Any questions on this motion?
Gene, just a question. Do we understand why the original issue happened on October 8th, becoming unbalancing, and is the work that we're doing now helping to prevent that, or the ultimate project, not just this lid replacement?
I thought I saw Mr. Watson on here. He's more adept at addressing it if he's still here.
I am.
There he is.
I am. So what was the question again? I'm sorry.
Well, the original 8, the unbalancing of the floating cover on October 8th, do we understand why that happened? And, with this replacement work that we're doing, do we know how to make sure that it doesn't happen again?
Well, the cover collapsed just because it was out of kilt, and over time the tension on the bars made it, the one end just collapse into the digester, which put a risk on our piping underneath.
Right.
Moving forward, we're not going to be replacing the digester cover with the same cover that was on there. We're just going to put a cap on it. Mm. So it's not going to act in the same way.
Okay.
Any other questions from council?
We won't have a recurrence, theoretically, of this issue.
No, no. It's just going to be a cover. Mostly, the main reason we're doing just a cover is for odor control.
Right. Okay.
Seeing no other questions or comments on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We do not have any public hearings tonight. With that, brings us to the reports of committees, boards, and commissions. First up is Planning Commission, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Ewald. So we had a meeting on Thursday, July 9th. Number of issues were discussed, quite an extensive meeting, including several of the projects related to Mr. Cranach and Fillmore and Franklin up there on the north side. Long-running projects, the zoning hearing board was just issue that we voted on earlier. Just one of many issues related to the 2 projects that are being done there. So, second, we had a final discussion on the 366, 376 Church Street development, which the Historical Architecture and Review Board has a decision on. We'll be voting on that later. And then in the August meeting, we'll be having a final decision on that storage unit building on that lot there. Finally, for tonight, we have a resolution around the 329 Griffin Street subdivision. This is on the north side, an existing double wide lot to construct a new single-family home, which was approved in the June PA meeting and is before us tonight. And Mr. Crack, I guess, can explain that a little bit further.
There's, well, the resolution's in your packet. It's, again, it's a simple process. There is one waiver that's being asked for, and that's to allow the applicant not to place geotextile fabric in the bottom of the filtration facility. Then that was supported by our borough engineer. The applicants are, I see they're here. If you have any other questions, otherwise this is queued up for a vote from council tonight.
All right, so I'll make a resolution of the Council of Borough of Phoenixville, Chester County, Pennsylvania, officially approving final subdivision and land development plan known as 329 Griffin Street subdivision.
Second.
Try that again. We have a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Ms. Berkeley. Any questions on the motion or any questions for the applicants tonight? Seeing no questions from council, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. And back to you, Mr. Moore.
Those are all the actions concerning, apologize. Second option item is the action memo from the Planning Commission concerning the Keg Lumber project, which was voted on and denied. So, Mr. Crack, if you can explain that a little bit further.
Sure. This project goes back several years, and there's been basically no action to move it forward. So back in February, we sent a letter giving 120 days for the applicant to do something. Tell us what you're doing. Give us some amendment to a plan, but let us know what's going on. They have not done that. It has passed that 120-day time frame. So in the borough's engineers review letter, there are, we believe, enough items that you can go ahead and deny the land development plan as recommended by the Planning Commission at their July 10th meeting. Chuck, if you've got any background as to the recent Act 15 that allows certain things that we have to do as far as timing. We think we've met that timing as well as it relates to any extensions.
That's correct, Gene. Act 15 adds some additional language with respect to notification when you have a pending plan, but based upon what we've done and how we've advertised this, we believe we satisfied that requirement. My only recommendation with respect to the motion is that we incorporate by reference the engineer's review letter. Gene, I don't know if you have the date of that letter. So if you're going to vote to deny the plan, it'll be for the reasons set forth in the RVE letter, the last review letter that contained the deficiencies. So that's the only thing I would recommend as inclusive in your motion of denial, because we will be sending a notification letter within 15 days as required by the planning code, explaining why the plan was denied.
And that would be the engineer's review letter of September 28th, 2018.
September 28th, 2018. Thank you, Gene.
So the motion would be a denial of the preliminary final lot consolidation and land development plan. Is that correct?
Yes. Motion to deny the TAG lumber preliminaries, final lot consolidation and land development plan for the reasons set forth in the RVE letter of September 28th, 2018.
Okay. So I make the motion that the Borough Council of Phoenixville deny the preliminary final lot consolidation and land development plan of Take Lumber at 405 Bridge Street, referencing the RVE letter of deficiencies, September 28th, 2018 is the reason why.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
We have a motion by Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Kirkner. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Any other updates from Planning Commission, Mr. Moore?
Not at this point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Moving on to our next report out, we have the Historic Architecture Review Board with Mr. Weiss as our liaison.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Coming out of the HARB this month, I ask that you consider the approval of the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition and new construction for 366 and 370 through 376 Church Street. This was recommended 7-0 coming out of HARB. If you'd like, if we can pull up the attachment that was in everybody's board packs for a quick review, just to familiarize yourselves with this. I know it may have been a day or two since you read it. On page 5, you can get an aerial view of where this activity would take place. They would be demolishing the existing structures and building a new structure. As I understand it, this is not the first time that they have come to HARB, but that they have taken the recommendations coming out of the review board to heart, implemented them into the designs in such a way that the board feels as though this project can move forward. If you're interested in renderings also in the board pack, I believe those are on pages 16, 17, and 18. My computer's moving a little slow, so it's taking me a minute to catch up. So that's going from memory.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this, have they cut off the top floor, or is it still like this huge structure that it was the last time I saw it?
It is a large building, one that is in alignment with other industrial type buildings in the immediate area and in the borough. But yes, it's rather large.
They were waiting for me to get off of that committee. I'm just telling you. I'll still be enough.
Right now, we're just voting on the, speaking from the perspective of the Planning Commission, right now we're just voting on the demolition of the old single-story garages on the back part of the property and the one small structure right on Church Street. They did and are preserving 2 of the older historic homes there on Church Street.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you, Mr. Moore. So I think in previous versions of this plan, there was the demolition of some homes. I think they found a way to preserve those homes and I think fix them up to serve as rentals. Another minor item that may be of interest to the folks here. There will be parking for this building, and it will be on the first floor of the building, so it will be kind of self-contained parking. I know that's always an ever-present concern here in the borough.
Do we have that as a motion, Mr. Weiss?
I can certainly make it so. Can I make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for the demolition and new construction request for 366 through 376 Church Street, as recommended 7-0 in the HARB action memo dated July 7th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Weiss, seconded by Mr. Moore. Any further discussion on the motion or the application? I believe the applicant is in the room with us tonight. If there's any specific questions, but as Mr. Moore stated, this is pertaining to the demo of the old garages and one small non-historic structure. Okay. Seeing no, oh, Dana, you're on mute.
We're voting on just the demolition, or are we voting on the whole project? I'm just a little confused. Normally we vote on one thing and they go about and do that, so I'm a little confused.
So we're voting on the hard appropriateness of them keeping the building and tearing down the other ones. But I believe this is
not on the building of the next.
Yeah, the full, speaking from behalf of the planning commission, that has been through the planning commission, but, will be before us in the August meeting, the full planning commission, approval and that building and so forth. Right?
Yeah, I believe this
we're
is
just voting for them to just take down what they, clearing the path for it and not do anything.
I think it's more approving the certificate of appropriateness coming out of HARB for the demolition and construction. I don't think it's approving construction. Is that accurate?
If I may, Mr. President, reading the action memo, it does say the approval is only for the demolition and new construction as listed on the application.
Correct.
So no, this will be a definite no for me.
So it does, I mean, the way this reads, it's demolition and new construction.
Correct. And the new construction will also be vetted by the planning commission.
Yeah, this is again just the certificate, just approving HARB's certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah.
HARB has no more authority than your ordinance gives to HARB. So this is going to go through the planning commission and come back to you for approval as a land development.
Did we make that any clearer? Okay, any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-3.
Who are the three no's?
Mr. Dalton, Mr. Kirkner, Ms. Dugan.
Okay, I missed Jeremy. Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, anything else out of HARB?
Nope, that'll be it. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Mr. Kirkner, anything out of Regional Planning Committee?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Regional Planning Committee, we've been meeting on Zoom. Not much going on there. We had a workshop meeting at the end of June on the absorption of West Pikeland Township into the Regional Planning Committee. And we also heard another proposal from the Phoenixville Area Clean Energy Alliance regarding a grant to implement a Ready for 100% renewable energy plan. And the Regional Planning Committee also took action on the Odessa project, that finding it was generally in compliance with the regional plan, but also adding a list of something like 10 recommendations with regard to that plan. So that pretty much does it for regional planning.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkner. Ms. Dugan with Rec Board.
I wish I could give you an update, but we will have a meeting. I guess it's this coming Monday. So at least I'll have something to talk about next month.
And Mr. Soto was not able to join us tonight. I don't know if there's anything reporting out from BAC. Mr. Crack,
I will, on behalf of the folks, they had intentions of speaking aloud about the situation with the mural, but basically through the various committees via HARB, via BAC, and what have you. I think I was able to talk to Teresa, to the BAC, to Lou, as chair and basically say, look, everybody knows what the issue is. Council has taken the position of vetting changes through the policy committee. So through Jeremy's committee, we will go through this and take a look at things moving down the road. We certainly, as a staff, took on board an awareness that if something is coming through and we recognize that there's something adjacent to it, that we'll bubble that up. And so I think they felt comfortable enough with all of the things that we as staff are doing and you as council are doing, that we all got the message, and they decided not to come tonight and take up any more time. So I think that was a good, positive way to work our way through it, and then we'll move forward with Mr. Dalton's committee.
Very good. And with that, we'll move on to council action referred from council committees. Ms. Berkeley with Police Personnel, Public Safety.
We don't have any action to report, but I am happy to report that we were able to meet virtually this month. So we will resume that as long as needed. So I assume that, as you mentioned before, our meeting in August will be virtual as well. And thank you for everybody for their time in the appointments to civil service as well.
If I might, one of the topics of discussion is, because of the scenario that we're in and the uncertainty as to when we will be live again, all of the, going back to the boards and commissions and what have you, we're going to send those applications to Police Personnel Public Safety so that there's a vetting that occurs in a committee and then a recommendation that comes to council to help us get some of the vacancies that we have taken care of.
Yes, that's an item that we've discussed in the past, and I welcome to some additional vetting and as we move forward. Zoom is not a great platform for this on its own, so unless there's any issues with that, it'll just be a recommendation or suggestion out of that committee. Okay. Moving on, Mr. Soto was not able to phone in tonight. Does Mr. Moore or Ms. Dugan want to report out those actions from Parks and Rec?
If I might, the first item, we received earlier indications that it was heading that direction, and then there was an affirmation to staff that item 1 is going to go virtual, so there won't be a TCE. There's no need to vote on that, so you can go to item 2.
Okay.
I'll make a motion for a temporary community event application for the Shoes and Brews Half Marathon on Saturday, September 26, 2020 on Bridge Street.
Oops, excuse me. That one got pulled off as well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're on item 2 of the agenda for council, which is the adopt a park request.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the adopt a park request from Jean and Tom Reese for Reeves Park.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Moore. Questions on this motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. I thank the Reeses for their interest in adopting Reeves Park and look forward to seeing what their vision is. And then one other item out of Parks and Rec tonight. Mr. Moore, Ms. Dugan, would you like to report out?
Sorry, I'm getting lost in my paperwork here. This is the...
Mr. President, if I
Yes,
may.
Mr. President.
Yes, Although this is not my committee, I was involved in a meeting with the folks, with the athletic director at Renaissance Academy and Mr. Soto and Melissa Gibbons, the rec director at the field there. And this was also discussed at the policy committee meeting. And there were a couple things up in the air at the time, namely whether this would be a shed or a storage pod. And I don't know if any updated information has been presented to the borough manager with regard to this. So I would, if I may, direct that question to the borough manager. Have you received any updated information on this?
The information that's in your packet is the latest information that I have. I think there was like a drawing of the type of shed that it might be. I know Melissa and I know that Kevin are both on. So maybe just ask Kevin directly, what's it going to be?
Yes, so I submitted a proposal for, during our meeting with Mr. Kirkner, Mr. Soto, and Melissa at Friendship Field, I brought up the idea of either doing some type of possible permanent structure, a shed with the information I sent you. It was like a 12 by 26 shed, and the idea of fitting our soccer goals that we currently store there, as well as the start of a football program that we're starting to just keep some of their equipment over there to prevent the teams from kind of lugging it back and forth from the school. We also discussed the possibility of just putting like a pod over there, because that would not be temporary. It would be there from August to October and then be picked up and would not come back until the next August and October, because it would just be used for fall sports over there. The proposal that I sent in about a week ago, kind of updated based on our meeting at the field. It kind of had the pod as an option, and it had the shed as an option as well. That was kind of brought to the borough council to kind of see which one they would prefer. Renaissance Academy is fine with either. They were just two options, one being a permanent structure and one being kind of a non-permanent one, just there for the fall sports, and then it would be picked up and removed based on our discussions at the field.
There is an item called storage proposal for Friendship Field dated the 7th of July that should be in your packet. It shows option 1, which is the pod, and then option 2, which is the storage shed.
Melissa, I think she's on the call. Do you have any insight or input on either option?
No, I'm fine with either one.
I'm a little confused, Mr. Crack. Is there a resolution at this point, or is this just a discussion?
We would need a motion to approve the agreement.
Right.
Okay. Then I'll make a recommendation to consider the request from Renaissance Academy for a storage shed at Friendship Field as defined by the items located in today's packet, which was recommended in committee, the Parks and Recreation Committee 3-0.
So I will second. I just wanted to highlight and make sure the motioner is okay with the fact that in policy committee, we did recommend that we approve this with the conditions listed in the agenda.
So understood.
We have a motion by Mr. Moore, second by Ms. Berkeley. Let's discuss the motion or the proposal. Any questions that have not yet been answered?
So the motion is for a shed or a storage unit?
Currently, the motion is for a storage shed, which I believe would be then option 2, as listed in that. Kevin, you can correct me, but that's the way I would interpret the motion at the moment.
Yeah, just looking at the agenda again, I put a proposal to both because I'm flexible with either of them, but I think the permanent shed is more more helpful to both the borough, just with the fact that if Renaissance doesn't use it, it belongs to the borough. If even Renaissance is using it, we can still share space in that shed. So option 2 would be the permanent shed placed on there.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
And that was my understanding of what I was proposing in part, and I will just offer that in part. I prefer that over a pods thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a much better aesthetic.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to other committees. Mr. Dalton with policy.
No action to report. We do have a lot on the agenda, and we are meeting via Zoom on our regular scheduled meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Moving on to infrastructure, technology, and transportation, Mr. Weiss.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Up before us was a request from a developer to install water and sewer lines to the Odessa project from, everybody pronounces this wrong, so forgive me if I pronounce the name of this tree wrong. Mauer? Who? Brian Moore, how do you say it? It's your word.
I say Maori.
Maori? Maori,
Yeah.
I like it. And they would be utilizing a portion of the Schuylkill River Trail during construction. They would be creating an alternative path or rerouting to accommodate trail usage, so there shouldn't be an interruption to folks that are using the trail. As part of this, there were a couple caveats that we discussed in committee that are listed in the agenda here. One was that work would begin after December 12th, 2020. The developer has offered to deed the borough the parking lot that is adjacent to the trailhead there and to pave said parking lot for the borough. The paving of the trail and the parking lot will happen as soon as possible, but before the end of March next year in 2021. And I think I already mentioned, but an alternate route will be maintained throughout this closure to provide trail services. Any questions?
President, I have a question.
Was that a motion?
That was not. That was just an explanation.
Mr. Kirker?
Yes, I have a question with regard to the alternate route. Has that been mapped out at this point?
Yes, I believe it has.
There's a document in your packet. It says Franklin Water Sewer Trail Plan. So you can see that plan as it relates to where the trail is at versus where Fillmore Village is at. And it basically goes from Maori up to the entrance point at Odessa. It's highlighted in red on the map.
Ms. Dugan?
I feel like we looked at a trail for this before. Is that correct?
So this is the
An
water
alternate
sewer.
route, for the, we saw this before.
So the water sewer that they're looking to install is the same as before. This is a new option for the routing of the trail, where it does not close the trail during the duration of the project.
Yeah, I think it solves for several of the concerns or objections that folks had the last time this came around.
And from what I can tell, it parallels, but kind of up on the slope, the existing trail. So as I understand it, looking at the map, the purple dotted line is the temporary trail, and the red dotted line is where the pipe will be put in, and is the existing trail.
Oh, Mr. Weiss, would you like to?
Yep, make a motion. So I will make a motion to grant the developer's request for the water and sewer lines to be installed from Maori Road to the Odessa project using a portion of the Schuylkill River Trail, assuming the conditions previously stated. Do I need to read those again for the record, or as part of my motion?
You should.
Okay. Those conditions are: A, that work will begin after December 12th, 2020. B, that the developer will deed the borough the parking lot adjacent to the Maori Road trailhead and pave the parking lot for the borough. C, the paving of the trail and the parking lot will happen as soon as possible and before the end of March 2021. And D, an alternative route will be maintained throughout the closure of the primary trail.
Second.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Weiss, second by Ms. Berkeley. Now for discussion on the motion. Any remaining questions or comments? We do have the applicant on the call tonight if there's any questions for the applicant.
Mr. President, I have a question, but it's more of a hypothetical question. Is a vote for this a proxy vote, sort of, for the northern relief route? I don't know if that's a...
I had quite the same opinion on this one right here, so I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I would not take this to mean a any sort of deemed association to Odessa as a planned project, or the Northern Relief Route as a part of the Odessa project. This is an offer of the developer to bring a water and sewer line up the trail. The borough certainly can benefit from that at the end of the day, but it does not condition anything as it relates to the Northern Relief Route or the Odessa project. It's just you're approving merely the installation of water and sewer lines on borough property. And if I'm wrong, Mr. Moskowitz or Mr. Gardner can tell me differently.
I agree, Mr. Crack. I don't think you're misstating anything there.
Any other questions on the motion?
I do have a question looking at the map. The existing parking lot next to the existing trail will be utilized, existing parking lot, as construction equipment and materials staging area. So then I take to the west of it, there will be that the parking area that we are being told will be paved will be an additional parking area that will then service the temporary trail. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think the intent is to use the existing parking lot as a service area for the equipment as it might be necessary. But when the project is done, the existing parking lot that's there is the one that would be paved.
Okay, so then construction equipment and materials could be in the existing parking lot, but that parking lot will also remain open for use by people who want to park there to use the trail.
Correct.
Okay.
So, Mr. President, if I may,
yes.
I just want to lay this out as I understand it. The developer is offering to put in a sewer line to a project that has not been approved, that's contingent on a road that hasn't been built.
Well, the Odessa project did receive preliminary approval,
right?
Several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. So the preliminary plans have been approved.
And the final plans are coming through, as Mr. Kirkner alluded to earlier. They've already been vetted through the PRPC and are coming through. They're not. I don't believe going in. They could go into August or they could go in September. They've given us an extension out to, I believe, November. So based on the fact that he has preliminary plans, it would not be unusual for a developer to ask to bring infrastructure to a site. but it has to be, to your point, it has to be understood, this is not providing any sort of preemptive authorization or approval to either the Northern Relief Route or the Odessa plan.
Ms. Dugan.
Understood. Thank you.
Doesn't it seem like if we were to approve this, it kind of does give them a way to come back? But like, we did this for you. And I mean, it kind of puts us on the hook, approving this before the whole thing is approved. It just feels
It puts
awkward.
his bank account on the hook.
It's just awkward. I don't think it's right.
I mean, it's a financial risk for the developer. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, but it makes us look bad as though we're taking this and, you know, whether we have any intention of approving it or not. It kind of puts us on the hook. I don't like the way it looks.
So Dana, the plan was already approved. The project is not contingent upon the Northern Relief Route. So what we have offered we've offered to give the current trail parking lot we're giving to the borough, and we're giving it paved, and we created an alternative route for the trail that basically is the trail. So we're not implying anything. That those conversations are for the borough council to make. Fillmore Street can serve Odessa, so that's a secondary conversation. What we're asking to do, and what we have been asking to do since our preliminary approval, is to bring sewer across the trail. And there was a lot of very good conversation that happened throughout the various neighborhoods and among trail users. So this is not an endorsement for anything more than what you've already endorsed. And those conversations that you're concerned with are borough council questions that only borough council can answer.
May I add something?
Mr. Moskowitz.
In the motion where it says as soon as possible, I think it should be understood that means as soon as possible after the December trigger date, because we would do the paving after the sewer and water lines are in. We would fix the paving on the trail, and that's the point in time at which we would pave the parking lot. And then, of course, the construction vehicles would no longer be on the parking lot.
That was our understanding, Mr. Moskowitz.
Yeah. Do we need to amend the motion to that effect, or do we think that is implied and clear?
I think we're comfortable with what has been motioned already. I mean, we know that there's not going to be any blacktop work, quite frankly, between December and March, typically in any year, because the plants are shut down for maintenance.
Yeah. Any other questions from council on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes 5-2. Mr. Weiss, anything else out of ITT?
No, I think that'll be it for me. Thank you, Mr. President.
And moving on to Finance Committee, Ms. Dugan.
All right, I think I'm gonna bundle 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 prepaids dated 5/8/2020 to 6/10/2020 in the amount of $801,653.34. To approve the 2020 prepaids ACH dated 5/31/2020 in the amount of $221,562.03. To approve the 2020 prepaids credit card statement dated 5/8/2020 to 6/10/2020 in the amount of $45,834.18. And to approve the RVE recommendation to award the water treatment plant filter media cleaning bid to Carbon Filtration Systems Incorporated in the amount of $105,000.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Dugan, second by Mr. Moore. Questions on the motion? Seeing no questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
And moving on to 5, I think that, I suppose I would address Mr. Crack to ask him where we should be addressing this right now.
Okay, folks, this is the time when I tell you that it's never a good time and it's always a bad time. You've got some very serious topics before you, and unfortunately, this is a terrible way to do this kind of business. But we don't know when we're going to be back in a room together. We don't know what's going to happen down the road. What we do know is that borrowing money is always a difficult issue for Borough Council because it almost invariably means there's a raise in taxes to cover the debt service. You have an aging, a very aged recreation building, and you have an outdated and an aged firehouse, both of which are bleeding us out, basically. We have the ability and have gone through many maturations to get land, to be able to do the things that we want to do, and are in the middle of the design phase. We have very reasonably good numbers for the cost of borrowing money. Most of you, with the exception of Rich and Dana, probably have not been through this process before. So what typically occurs is we go through all of the teeing up of, getting this through design and engineering and into the place where now it's time to borrow money. We have certain requirements as it relates to establishing the millage in the tax ordinance, which is in December. So when you start with December and you work your way backwards, quite frankly, barring you saying absolutely no, let's stop, we're not doing anything, now is the time to start making decisions. August is really the time frame where you need to make a decision. But to brief you on that, we bring in a team of folks. We bring in bond counsel, and we bring in our financial advisor to walk you through what a typical bonding evolution is. And so on this medium tonight is Ryan Hottenstein, Gary Polsini, and Dave Onkovic. You may recall, I believe Dave was involved with our 2012 bond back when I think it was he and Susan with another firm. He is now, he went to the state and did some work with the state, and then ultimately went to work for McNeese Wallace in another department of that organization. So we have the three folks here. I think it's prudent that they basically maybe give you a little ABCs of what a bonding is first, and I think I'll let Dave start that process just to give some basic stuff. There was things in your packet, and then let Ryan and Gary talk to you about timing, bond ratings, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and all of the ancillary things as it relates to what evolutions we have to go through over the next several months, assuming you want to do this project. Based on everything that we've done, everything that you've told us to do, we're at that place. So now's the time to have this discussion. So if you're okay, Ms. Dugan, I'll ask Dave Onkovic to give a little background on bonding.
Great. Thank you, James. Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, members of Council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. My name's Dave Unkovic. I'm a lawyer with McNeese, Wallace, and Nurek. I work out of Lancaster. The process for incurring debt and issuing bonds is similar to when you're buying a house. There's a preparatory period. There's the cutting of the deal, which with your house purchase is the agreement of sale. With your bond issue, it's enacting an ordinance that's accepting a proposal from an investment banking firm that wants to buy your bonds. And then there's the period from cutting the deal to getting to closing, which is about a 30-day period. So it's similar to sort of a house purchase. So there's a statute in Pennsylvania called the Local Government Unit Debt Act, which governs the ability and the process for either municipalities or school districts to issue debt under Pennsylvania law. One of the purposes of that statute is to put a cap on how much debt you can issue without going to the voters. And that's based on a formula based on your average revenues. And so when you're issuing debt, you can issue without voter approval within certain debt limits under the Debt Act. It also describes how the debt is structured. And the goal there is to make sure that it's basically level, either for an individual bond issue or for the aggregate of all your bond issues, so that you're not getting a debt service payment that suddenly shoots up from one year to the next. So once you decide, what projects you do want to finance, then we start taking these steps under the Debt Act, which leads to the process of eventually enacting an ordinance and approving the issuance of the debt, and then submitting the ordinance and certain other paperwork to the Department of Community and Economic Development in Harrisburg, who then approves the bond issue, and then you can issue the bonds. So that's sort of the legal process that's going on. As bond counsel, we cooperate with your solicitor in developing an ordinance to approve the debt and to make the filings with the state and get the approval done through DCED. The other aspect of the bond issue process is teeing up the rating agencies and the financial side of what's going on. And I'll kick it over to Ryan at this point to pick up there.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much all for having us this evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. I think from a standpoint of going forward, sometimes it's good to just get an understanding of where you are in your existing debt service, and then we'll go forward and take a look at what some of the costs are of what we're seeing in the market right now, but then also expand on what Dave said regarding the process and the rating agencies and how that would look. I do believe I can share my screen with you. So I'm going to share this screen with you. You can see right here is your current debt service for the Borough of Phoenixville. You currently have, please let me know if you need to zoom in. I can expand that so you can see it. You currently have one series of long-term debt outstanding. It's a 2012 series. It matures from 2020 through 2037. It currently pays debt service of principal and interest of about $1.38 million a year through 2027, when it drops off to $570,000. And as Dave mentioned earlier, under the Laguda debt, you need to have level debt service or decreasing. So in this case, the borough's debt service is level and then decreases in the end. So that meets the obligations under Laguda for level and decreasing debt service. Here is the principal and interest rate. Bonds are sold in different blocks and different maturities. Each of the maturities will have a different yield when you sell. And sometimes that rate when you price is the same. So here you can see these maturities range from an interest rate of 2% on the maturity of 2020 down to 4% for your maturity out to 2037. And that's typical in the bond market. Obviously, the longer you go out on the yield curve, the longer you're giving investors, and longer investors are giving you their money. Obviously, they look for a higher rate of return. So you see that increasing rate from the beginning towards the end. The 2012 bonds, just to let you guys know, were sold for the refunding of the series of 2003, and they were also to pay for the new municipal building, some water plant retrofit, and the sewer system improvements. As you saw and we listened this morning, obviously the financial wherewithal of the borough is great, and that's reflective in your underlying rating. In 2012, when you went to market, the borough received a AA stable rating, which is very high, especially from municipal issuers. And that is a great rating. That allows you access to a market at incredibly low yields, and also allows you to sell bonds without bond insurance, which we can get into later, but for the time being, we'll just move on. Here's simply just a graph of what your debt looks like. Obviously, you can see you drop off here in the pictorial sense. So the projects that you're looking at right now are the two projects, as Gene mentioned earlier, the fire station and the recreation center.
Hey, Brian, can I back up a second?
Absolutely.
Can you back that slide back up?
Sure can.
So what this is representing, the years 2020 through 2027, is all of the debt. The way we structured this is that the building goes out to 2037, but the water and sewer debt gets paid off in 2027. So the improvements that we did at the water plant and the sewer plant get paid off. That's why there's such a drop off.
Right. So those improvements had a 15-year maturity, and the new money for the building went out to the 37. All right. So moving on. So what we did was we put together a sources and uses under two different assumptions so you could see it. What it would look like if you needed to borrow this money on a 20-year amortization, and what it would look like if you needed to borrow the money on a 25-year amortization. In both cases, the project costs remain the same. So in this middle section here, you can see here are our uses. We have the fire station, we have the recreation center, and then we have the estimated cost of issuance. On an issue of this size, when we're looking at about $12 million, we're estimating the cost of issuance conservatively at about $190,000. So we are looking for the fire station to finance it with $6.13 million of bonds, receiving the grant from the RCAP of $1 million, and then some premium from the sale of the bonds for total financing sources of $7.3 million. That would be enough to pay for the fire station and to pay for your cost of issuance. And you see the total sources here in the fire station. They match up, and you have equal amounts in the sources and uses. The recreation center is very similar, other than the RCAP, which you've already had approved at $1.5 million for the project of $7.5 million on the recreation center. Again, you can see here your total sources match your total uses. This again was for the 20-year term. We, in both cases, as you'll see next, we assumed average debt service. So for the fire station portion, for that, to borrow that $6.1 million, you'd be looking at about $396,000. And for the recreation center, you'd be looking at about $381,000. Between both projects, you'd be looking at an average annual debt service of about $780,000 for 20 years, with an average interest rate on that of 2.3%. Those would be fixed rate bonds. They would be fixed at the time of pricing, and that rate would not change. Once we price the bonds, that rate is locked in, and the borough does not have to worry about interest rates changing in the future or paying higher interest rates. And again, right now, we're looking at an all-in tick of 2.331. Current interest rates are really at all-time historic lows, and especially for an issuer with such a high credit rating like you have, it really is a great time to be in the market. Again, here's the exact same thing. It's just at a 25-year amortization. So you can see that your debt service from an average perspective drops, and in total, obviously, it would drop as well. But because you're pushing it out further, you're going 5 years longer. That means you're going further up the yield curve. Your interest rate from a blended perspective would go up slightly to $2.526 million. And then this page here simply shows the current debt service and then what your future debt service would be at the 20-year amortization and then also at the 25-year amortization. So you're, on a 20-year amortization, your debt service would go in 2021 from $1.39 million up to $2.176 million. And again, for the 25, it wouldn't go up as much because your annual debt service would be slightly lower. It would go up to $2.72 million, $2.072 million.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Looking at these numbers, how does this level of debt service compare to other similarly sized municipalities? Is this a heavy burden? Is this par for the course? Is this lighter than most?
I would say it's par for the course.
Okay.
You know, certainly what we would recommend is, you know, you don't want to be exceeding all funds of debt service, you know, much higher than the 10% threshold, but your all-in funds budget is enough to certainly support something like this. And certainly your financial performance, having, you know, in the general fund, at least last I saw, almost 100% of revenues for a year in reserve, your performance certainly supports this type of debt service without much strain overall. Obviously, I understand that certainly any decision like this is a big one, and from a taxpayer perspective is something you need to consider and not take lightly at all. But you know, it's certainly not outside the norms.
Ryan, Gary Pulsini here, and thank you for having us this evening. You may want to also note that on the existing debt service, in the higher years, that is being paid by sewer and water revenues. The debt service that's related to the municipal building is about $570,000 a year.
Yes.
So, you know, general obligation taxes versus revenues from users of the water system or the sewer system.
Good point, Gary. That's a big point.
That's this, as Gene had mentioned earlier.
Okay. So our general fund debt service is the delta between that 1.4 and that 570.
Right. It's really the 570.
Oh, sorry, the 570. Right. Gotcha.
Yeah. Really the 570.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt, and thank you very much.
Absolutely no problem. And as Dave mentioned, you know, we really do look at this kind of as the process does take time. It is involved. We normally like to look at it as 3 stages. Typically we look to say about 90 days from the beginning of the process till the end of the process when you close and the issuer receives the funds. I try to break them up into 30-day chunks, basically 1 month each. The first month being a period where we are working with the administration into gathering all the information on the borough, its finances, the economics of the area, demographics of the area, and using that information to put that together in what we call a preliminary official statement, which is an offering document to the market. We'll put that together along with a description of the project, what it's going to be used for, 5-year history, financial history of the borough, your audits, continuing disclosure compliance. And at the same time we'll be developing that, we will also, in your case, in the past, the borough has done competitive sales, which is an auction rate where you basically put the sale up on auction and underwriters bid to sell to buy your bonds. And it's a competitive process where you run that process. You can see in real time underwriters submitting proposals to purchase those bonds and be able to do the issue on behalf of the borough. So we would put together a preliminary official statement and also a notice of sale. During that same time, we would be reaching out to the rating agencies. You can typically municipal issuers would either use Moody's Investor Services or S&P. We would put that information out to the rating agencies. We would ask for a list of questions on what they would be looking for. We would be scheduling a meeting between the rating agency and the borough administration to review the financing, go through that. We would hold a rating call, and all of that would happen in the first month. After that period of time, then we get moved towards the period of pricing and actually selling those bonds, and then some post-closing stuff. So after we get the rating call, we would then get the rating. Typically, the rating would come in about a week after our rating call. Once we have that rating, we would go ahead and add that to the preliminary official statement. We would post all that information online with Grant Street, which is the website that runs competitive deals for municipal issuers. And then we would schedule that to, typically what we would do is schedule that to coincide with one of your meeting dates. So that on the second Tuesday in September, I'm just using that as an example, we would schedule the sale. We would hold the sale in the morning. We would receive the bids. We would get the low bid. We would fill out all the information on that. And then that night, Dave, myself, Gary would come to the meeting with the results of that bid for your approval. Once you approve that, we would let the purchaser know. We would get that back to them that night, send that information to them, get the signed acceptance to them, and then move forward. From there, we would move forward with closing. After that, that takes about another 30 days post pricing, and we would work with your staff and your solicitor as well as Dave Unkovic to get all the documents together, to put all the closing information together, and then get all those signatures needed for closing, and then finally close on the issue, normally about 30 days after that bond pricing. That whole process takes about 90 days.
So from a legal perspective, the contract that's being entered into is between the borough and the winning underwriter in the bidding process. So when your financial advisor sends out an invitation to bid, they're asking for bids, as you do with other contracts, from groups of underwriters to bid on your bonds. So they go through this electronic process where they're bidding against each other. And then normally you would accept the low bid, which is the lowest interest rates that are being offered by a particular underwriter. And then that underwriter, when they put in their proposal, that's their offer to sell you the bonds at specific interest rates. And when you enact the ordinance the night of the pricing, you're accepting that offer from a particular underwriting firm and awarding them the bonds. And at that point, everything's locked in under the ordinance, and then you go another 30 days to closing.
Certainly, we can move as quickly as needed for the borough. The one thing, as I mentioned earlier, interest rates are really at very attractive rates for issuers. We do have a general concern with being in the market anywhere around the presidential election. Certainly, the one thing municipal markets and markets in general don't like is uncertainty. So as we get towards something that large and major in our world, things sometimes with that uncertainty becomes more unknowns. So certainly we would prefer, or we were talking to our clients about, if you need this money, it's better to try and get these things priced before we get to the presidential election.
Brian, I might add for the members of council that were here, as you may recall, in November of 2016, we were going to be in a joint bond for the purchase of all of our LED lights. And within 2 days of the election, the entire bond market blew up. We wound up self-funding those lights because the bond market blew up so bad that we couldn't get a bond at the state level. The state could not get a bond, and wound up having to strike a deal with Fulton Bank as gap financing, and we saw that the interest rates were just too much and that we could self-fund it. So what Brian is saying is absolutely true. We have no idea what can happen, but we have seen it happen to us in at least one instance. I killed everybody. What the heck?
Gene, I may add from this process, if you will, really the point of no return from a council perspective in making this decision is all of us, the professionals here, work on the basis that we don't get paid unless the financing closes. When it becomes real for the council and for the borough is when you decide to go to the rating agency. Once we put all that documentation together that Ryan referred to, once we go to the rating agency, that's when they get paid no matter what.
That's correct.
So pretty much from that standpoint, you've really kicked the decision that you're going forward with this. When you sell the bonds, unlike, if you do a car loan or a house, a mortgage, if you decide to change your mind, it's no blood, no foul. In the bond market, they're like elephants. They have a long history. And so if you go to put the bonds on the market and then change your mind the night of the sale, that reflects negatively on the borough. And if you would go back later, it would probably cost you some in interest rate. So really, once we decide to go the rating agency is really where the council's made its decision to move forward. Obviously, when we post the documents on the internet about a week prior to the sale, if for some reason, let's say the day of the sale, the night before the sale, war breaks out in the Mideast, somewhere, South China Sea, wherever, you can call the bid off and we can reschedule it. But barring anything crazy happening, we're pretty much off to the races once we decide to go to the rating agency.
You mean we're not in crazy yet?
Yeah, from a commitment standpoint. I'll refrain from comment.
Okay, you guys, how about council? Chuck, any thoughts, council? Any thoughts or questions that you want to ask while these folks are still here? I've alluded to a target. We kind of need to know how you feel about that as well. At some point, we gotta start moving paper. At some point, council's got to make a decision. I'm asking that you at least consider the August date as a go or no go. But your council, so you guys get to talk amongst yourselves and figure out what you want to do here.
First off, just thank you to our presenters here. I asked Gene to get this up to date because I hadn't been through the bond process yet. Was there anything else from any of the presenters on where we stand? No. I just want to make sure. Okay.
No. Just any questions that you may have?
No, I think the borough should recognize it's in a very strong position in terms of, especially its credit rating. They should be very proud of themselves, so to speak.
You really should.
So, members of council, any questions pertaining to the bond process or to our presenters or staff? Any council questions?
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Kirker.
If I may, I have no questions for the bond counsel or the staff. I do appreciate the presentation. I thought it was very informative. I looked through the materials and they are the packet that the firm had put together is very thorough. I'm just going to throw it out there that I think this may be something for the next finance meeting that we could dig into these numbers a little bit deeper and then come back to council at that time with a recommendation or not. But I think that venue, the finance committee, would allow us to really gnaw into this thing to get an idea of where of the numbers we're dealing with.
And Rich, to your point, I think it would be important that and we'll let Mr. Soto know this, but all of council should be on the finance committee meeting, listening to all of the devil in the details that we're going to discuss, even though it might be only the committee doing the actual heavy lifting, so to speak, to get it to possibly to a council meeting, but it would certainly be prudent that all of council attend the finance committee meeting in 2 weeks.
And
I agree.
our hope was that we'd be doing in-person meetings by then, but that's not going to happen. So we are at the point. I thought this was a good way of teeing off the next step, which is back to committee and then back to council. But I was hoping it would be in person by now, and that's just not the case. But in order to keep this on a timeline that allows us to maintain the budget cycle, I do think going to finance is the next step. I appreciate the presentation because this is not something I had background in prior to. Any other questions, concerns, or comments from council?
I will just offer that this was probably dug into in the finance committee. I was looking at the packet and there was highlighted what appeared to be legal, or I'm not quite exactly sure, but it's a series of highlighted pages discussing how much taxation would be allowed or permitted.
Right. Yes, what that is, Mr. Moore, is it allows us to allocate a portion of the millage to specifically address, and there's some uncertainty about the recreation piece, a little bit of uncertainty there as it stands, but there's a way to work around that. But a millage for the fire department, specifically for construction. So certainly, as it relates to, it's a tactic to be able to use, but you can use the millage for recreation, although it does not say specifically for construction. You know that we have a transfer of funds to recreation to cover the operation. So the operation part of the recreation department could then be made available for that millage. So you would have your general millage, and then you would have a fire millage, and then you would have a recreation millage. So that's easily identified to the taxpayers. That's what all of that was.
And that was something that was brought up at council last year that we were desiring to be able to see it in that format.
Yeah, and there's obviously, that allows you some flexibility as to how you want to raise that revenue. And there are special millages that have designated purposes. So like you point out, John, the taxpayer knows what the tax is for and where the money's going.
So I think it's important that that'd be a heck of a finance committee meeting, but we do that lifting at the same time that we do the consideration of the bond. But I think they go hand in hand. And I guess I'm still a little, I know we've had presentations on it, Gene, in Parks and Rec and in Borough, but just understanding just how certain we are of the, we're following this alternative path in terms of both these structures, how certain we are of the actual costs, so that we know that we're not under financing this and find ourselves kind of stuck. I know that there was a point a few years back. Well, it was when steel costs went out the roof, and we had to put a hole on the.
We will be bringing all of the information to both infrastructure next week, and then to finance. So to get to Rich's point, all of the information necessary to make a decision, whatever that decision is, will be there. We will have all of the Gorski stuff. We
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
What time is the finance meeting this month?
July is still the 6 o'clock meeting.
Okay, the only reason I suggest this is this could be a really long meeting and I don't want it to interfere with another meeting. So is there any way to change that, or are we set in stone at this point?
You okay, Mr. Dalton? Okay, we'll switch policy. We'll send out all the information.
Because I feel like this meeting could go on for a while. I mean, I have things to say. I mean, I'm sure everybody else is going to have their own opinion too. So
we'll switch policy to 6 o'clock and finance to 7 o'clock. Jen and I will work out the appropriate advertisements.
Much better. Thank you so much.
Do you feel that you need any of the gentlemen that presented tonight as part of finance?
I cannot imagine that it would hurt.
I don't really see it as necessary, but then again, this isn't my first rodeo.
Well, I'll talk to the three folks. And the meeting would be July 28th at 7 o'clock. So I'll talk to Ryan and David and Gary offline and see what their schedules are. It may be that only one of them has to participate. I think from a legal perspective, I don't think Dave necessarily needs to participate, but I'll talk to Ryan and Gary about who, if one or the other or both, is available to talk through the numbers, because that's what you're really going to be looking for at that point in time. The legal part of it, I think that was pretty clear. There's certain parameters. No matter what we do, those parameters are all going to stay the same. So I think Dave gets a free pass on the 28th.
Yeah, and certainly as we move forward, if you have questions and want to see different amounts, we can certainly run those numbers and you can see the sensitivity of them and what those changes are. So yeah, we're happy to participate as you'd like us to.
Can I make one general comment? A lot of my practice is serving as bond counsel on bond issues like this one, but a lot of my practice is also working as a consultant with financial advisors for DCED with a lot of local governments, boroughs and townships around the Commonwealth. And one thing that is said very frequently, you'd be surprised how often, is our goal is to get like Phoenixville is, in terms of economic development, the health of the community, the finances, and so forth. So I think not only do the rating agencies view you as AA and maybe AAA, hopefully, but also I think your colleagues at other municipalities in your area and elsewhere in the state look at Phoenixville and say that's a really great municipality. So I just wanted to pass that along.
Wow.
I appreciate you saying that. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's not a lot of AA, AAAs out there.
Wow, that's good company.
Any other members of council for any of our presenters tonight, or questions on the bonding process? Seeing no other questions, I do think if we're able to have one of them zoom in at the finance meeting, it would be useful to be able to tap into that knowledge. And I do hope that everybody from council is able to join us for the finance meeting. But unless Mr. Crack has anything else to add, I think that does it for this presentation.
I think you're right, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
With that, we will move into our second round of public participation. Again, the instructions were listed on the website for how to comment through the live stream system. I will defer to staff to see if there's any public comment to be read aloud for council's consideration.
Mr. President, we have one public participation that came in the middle of the meeting from Alara Vernola. She writes, does the borough monitor nighttime activity and trash on Bridge Street during the street closure? It seems like having a DJ out during the week is only going to encourage a party-like atmosphere, which is what I thought we were trying to avoid.
Okay.
I defer to the mayor. He's down there. What do you think? I thought we kept it pretty darn clean, and I thought we kept the noise ratio down quite effectively.
I do, Gene, to your point, I do think we're trying the very best that we can. Certainly, I know that, some of the businesses have put some music out. I live here on Bridge Street, and, I do know that sometimes it can become a little more crowded towards the later hours. But I know that we certainly have our police and also even our parking enforcement are working extended hours. Well, the police, of course, are on 24 hours, but I know that even our parking enforcement is working kind of in a capacity to help to monitor that later into the evening, to my understanding, is that correct? I think Kelly, yeah, yeah. So.
Okay.
But it's, I think, Mr. Crack, and certainly, to the public, it's something that we will continue to monitor. I think, like I said in my report a little earlier tonight, monitoring the health and safety of our community is probably one of the most important things we can do right now. And so certainly we will continue to improve week after week best that we can.
Very good. Any other public comment tonight?
No, Mr. President, there's no further public participation.
Thank you. With that, we will close the second round of public participation, move on to staff reports. The manager, police, fire, planning, public works, finance, and human resource reports were all in your packet. Any questions from any members of council on any of those items, or anything that any staff that would like to address? Okay. Seeing no other action on the agenda.
What about the manager's report?
Oh.
I'm sorry, what?
What about the manager's report?
I thought I heard a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. There's a packet of information relating to the Phoenixville Rail Service. I put the information in there because it's things are happening, and you're not necessarily seeing all of the dialogue. So it's there. I'm available to answer any questions if you have it, if you read through it. So it's up to council.
Yeah, I have a question which I really don't understand at all with this whole thing. Why should we be on the hook for any money that this rail service does? I don't like it at all. Like, why would we pay for anybody else's project? I'm just not getting this.
I can try to answer that, or Mr. Mayor or Mr. Ewald.
Peter, if you want to comment.
Absolutely. So I guess the question would be, Mr. Do you specifically mean that like another municipality's project? I guess I'm just a little unclear about what you mean.
I was reading all of the attachments and everything that went along with this, and I'm just not sure I understand why in any way we would be responsible for anything that they do or be on the hook for any money, anything in the future. A couple things that they said they were not going to do because we didn't put out a letter. I don't remember approving any money for them, and I don't plan on doing that. So, I mean, we got projects going on in town right now.
I think, and certainly when we, when the conversation came out specifically around this, the grant that was recently applied for, the Borough Council, and in all of the conversations, we have never gotten to the point in a conversation where we've discussed specifically requiring money from the borough itself. Now, that said, I will also put a caveat, and Mr. Ewald, Mr. Crack, if I start to go off a little, please, help me rein back in. But what I would say is that one of the ways that we were evaluating this potential project, and again, because it is still very much in its infancy, is to utilize a piece of legislation that would allow us to use tax incremental financing to potentially bring forward money from our community and say that this is something that our community prioritizes. However, it would be something that as a community, we would need to agree to it, the school district would need to agree to it, and the county would need to agree to it. We've gotten to this point because all three of the groups, including the borough, we've all kind of said we are interested in finding out more. No one has committed yet to any specific funding.
Okay.
So what I would say is that we've continued, all of us, right? All of these three groups have continued because we want to get an idea of, is this possible? How would it be possible? And with
It would
this
be
finance-
nice, but I don't think the people of Phoenixville should have to pay for a business that could make money off of people of Phoenixville. The whole thing just doesn't make any sense to me.
So it is certainly a different perspective, and what the legislation itself was really developed for was so that communities could prioritize their own transportation needs without necessarily needing to go into the highly competitive state and federal transportation. So, you know, if a community could come forward with its own funding, it could help move the process along a little bit faster. But to your point, Stugan, it would be something that if that point becomes where we need funding, that certainly is a much broader conversation that I think certainly belongs to the council and to the people of Phoenixville.
Did we ever agree to apply for this grant?
We applied for this grant last month. It was a resolution last month. And as part of the resolution, it was agreed that the borough was not committing any funds to this project.
All right, you'll forgive me, I missed last month's meeting.
There's no way that any one municipality can avoid paying for a transportation system that stretches theoretically from Reading to Philadelphia. But also, there is also no way that it can happen unless the municipalities along the route at some point put skin in the game. If we want to invest in converting automobile traffic and the roads and the congestions and the carbon footprint to some other kind of mass transportation that moves people up and down that non-passenger rail corridor. So somewhere along the way, skin in the game might be called for. Not now, but somewhere along the way. And that's a thing to consider.
And I would just say, Mr. Moore, I would just say that, you know, there's a very, what I would call a very traditional funding mechanism, which relies on petitioning, waiting for federal and state funding. And to your point, there is kind of this unique mechanism, which I think is the one that we are pursuing and evaluating at a much deeper level, which is potentially us putting forward funding from within the community. But as Mr. Ewald said, we've not committed to any specific funding, but we have all committed to the concept and continuing the idea of let's figure out more information as the concept moves forward.
Oh, I think it's a nice idea to discuss it because I would love to have one eventually in the future, but not right now, not soon, and I'm not paying anything here personally, so I'm pretty sure the majority of the community is going to feel the same way about that. So.
My other concern, just having read some of the packet and also seeing the news that it was originally the terminus was Phoenixville and now the terminus is Reading. Having been from Berks County, taking one of the last train rides from Market Street to the Reading station in 1980. My biggest concern is Norfolk Southern's letters seem to indicate that they ain't interested, they ain't way interested, and they kind of think that we are talking for them in a way that they don't get to. So I think we need to, as we pursue this, I need to understand, because it's their tracks. It's clearly their tracks. And I have had enough reading about this issue that the rail line does not like to share that line anymore with passenger service that they don't control. Understanding how that will change and how we negotiate with that owner. I mean, we can barely get them to lift an unused bridge over Main Street, you know, and this is an order of magnitude. So I know, Peter, you've been working it for many years now, and I just continue to be interested in it.
Absolutely. And I would say, even though we have been fortunate to have an incredible, this has been really a grassroots effort here within the community. And even though we have been at it, for probably for probably close to 2 years. What I would say is still very much in its infancy. You know, as you said, Mr. Moore, Ms. Dugan, there have been, you know, movements in what the project could look like, the project's locations, the stations, the communities that could be involved, and up to and including, as I'm sure you saw in the letter itself, who is actually going to be the operator of this? Is this Amtrak as an operator, SEPTA as an operator, another operator? And then it would really be up to the operator at that point in time to have those conversations with Norfolk Southern, since to your point, they do, Mr. Moore, Norfolk Southern owns those tracks. And so that would be something that we as a community, and certainly as not as a grassroots group, would be negotiating, but that would be something that the operator, and again, when we move further down the proverbial track with this project. But, you know, as all of you have said, it is something certainly we as a community have been interested in for a long time. And we will continue to gather and get as much information as we can. And then we will certainly bring back any decisions that need to be made to this group and to all of those taxing authorities.
Right now, they're not bike trails, they're still railroad tracks. And they once moved people all over this part of the state, so.
And just one point of clarification, particularly since Ms. Dugan wasn't here last month, this application was made, the borough agreed to make the application since the train group was not able to form an authority due to the pandemic. So it was their intention to actually form an authority and apply on their own. The clock was running low on the deadline for Chrissy, so the borough entertained the option and last month did approve, you know, making the application on that behalf. I believe going forward, you know, this will go back to, you know, they are planning on forming that authority that will then be looking at taking on the details. So, any other questions on the manager's report tonight? Seeing none other, I did just want to thank staff throughout for all the work that they did on the Route 29 bridge, the Schuylkill River Trail connector. It is nearly probably 98% finished. It is tremendous. It is dramatically safer, far more aesthetically pleasing. Both the underpass and the actual bridge project, I think, turned out better than I could have expected. And I thank all of our staff for working through a long process on a permanent community improvement. So with that is the end of our agenda. Somebody wants to unmute.
Motion to adjourn.
Right. We have a motion from Mr. Kirkner, second by Mr. Weiss. All in favor?
Second. Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.
Take care.